Right. Well, I'm here with Charlie and Gemma, two of our skills experts, to talk about a little known space inside the employee lifecycle stage. So little known that I actually wasn't sure what it was as a marketing person when we first talked about it. We're talking about Enable Me. And Enable Me, as I'm told, is basically the use of all the different HR technologies and the processes and people alongside that. And when we talk about moving to a skills-based organisation, there are a few considerations that you can basically split into two parts. So you've got the technologies that are built to supercharge skills. They're built for that purpose. They tend to be quite new, or they're sort of adaptations of these big HRIS systems where they've built these modules to do skills. Mm-hmm. On the flip side of that, we've got technologies which are existing technologies. They might be knowledge management, case management, and there's people and processes that support those that may need to be adjusted in order to leverage skills effectively. So why does enablement become so important, Charlie, in kind of making it all happen?
So yeah, as you say, enablement is really at the foundation of a skills-based approach. It's all about having, as you say, the right tools and processes in place, which will allow you to empower your employees to really foster that culture of experimentation, learning, adapting and growing. And it's really about setting up that ecosystem where you leverage the technology in order to foster this agility, to use the skills that you have in your organization rather than just the people based on what their title is.
Right. So big question on everyone's mind. We've heard that there's a lot of there's a Gordian knot to untie in this space. How can HR tech actually be optimized to make it work, to make it all run smoothly and make it easy for everyone?
Well, there's lots of different ways, first off. And sometimes it's about thinking about what does your core systems already do. So having a look through all of those existing tech that you have. So if you've got a core HCM, thinking about what data does it hold, what doesn't it hold, what are the solutions that you're actually trying to implement from a skills perspective. So what do you need it to do? And then think about, okay, if I've got these things in place, I just need to support it with an interface with a different technology. So it might be as simple as just having an AI-driven data tech that enables you to build your skills taxonomy. And then your HCM does everything else that you need it to do across the employee lifecycle. So there's lots of different ways, but first off, understanding what you've got, finding the gaps, and then thinking through what tech might then support you to do what you need it to.
You know, I think I've been working for a consultancy too long because in my brain I just had the as-is, map
the
out the as-is.
Map out the as-is, map out the to-be.
But exactly, but understanding kind of what you've got, what you need, it's a good place to start. So look, there's lots to consider, and the way that Gemma has spoken about it made it sound smooth and easy, ducks gliding on a pond. But I suspect there are a few challenges and things to look out for. Is there anything that comes to mind when I ask that question?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, the first key challenge is a lack of shared language around skills.
Oh, absolutely. We see so many businesses where they haven't got a common language around skills, or they've got different systems that have different skills taxonomies. Makes it really hard to then integrate across from your talent acquisition and through to your learning if you've got different skills taxonomies. So it's really important to think about how do those interface and which one's the primary one. So that's one of the challenges we see where people have introduced different technology with different skills taxonomies.
And that links really nicely into a second key challenge that we have, which is having outdated systems that actually really don't support having a skills-based approach or a skills framework.
Yeah, and that can't support a skills taxonomy or a skills ontology to then enable you to have that great experience across all of the other experience areas. So really getting that foundation in first is
yeah, as I was just about to say, Gemma is linking very nicely back to some of the work we've done on skills foundations. And I think that common language, making sure that you're really clear at the get-go about what you're trying to get out of the system is going to make a really big difference. Because if one team is calling it project management, someone else has got, race C, someone else has got, do you know what I mean? If that skill definition isn't there and you search for a skill or you're trying to talk about skills, it's kind of a bit of a dead end, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And another challenge, just whilst we're talking about it, is that we've talked about language and we've talked about systems, but this is really about processes as well from an Enable Me perspective. So sometimes we see technology being implemented, but it hasn't really been thought through what's the impact on some of those processes and how do you shift to a new process that really is skills-driven decision-making rather than job-based decision-making.
Yeah, exactly. So your existing HR tech, it's famously personalised, but typically to traditional methods like your job role or your level. But if you're trying to kind of skills-based organizations tend to talk about not having so much hierarchy. It's more about the potential of what you can add. So if you're in that situation where suddenly you're in an interface that thinks you're a line manager in a particular role, and it's got all the things you might need for that role, and all of your learning is customized to that, or all of these different cases, even it's knowledge management, all of the auto prompts are going to be tailored to that job role. How do you do that in a skills-based organization? How do you reset everything, reconfigure it?
Absolutely, and technology does allow that. So if you think about performance, if you work in an organisation that's skills-based and gig-based, how do you make sure that those individuals are able to be performance managed for the gigs that they're working on, especially if that's a part-time one against their business-as-usual role? So there's lots of different tech out there that does do that, but it's a challenge to do it. That's not a straightforward solution always. And so it's one to think about in terms of what you want to achieve and how you get there.
Yeah, and I think there's a really big point of this is it's going to be a lot of change, and I think just really making sure that you have the correct sort of and a robust change management approach that goes along with all of this is going to be really important to ensuring to
get where you need to be. Yeah, exactly. 100%. And I think, look, we've talked about the challenges, and we're not saying that they don't exist, but one of the things that Gemma and I love to discuss, and I'm sure you would love to discuss with us, Charlie, is also that it's about being really targeted, choosing an area. You don't need to kind of throw away every single tech that you previously bought because you want to implement skills across the board. It might be that you're focusing on a targeted skills approach in a particular area. You can review that technology, see how much it can support, and then kind of build it out from there. So
absolutely, it doesn't have to be for all of the organisation either. Yeah. So it might be that you have technology that's just for a particular segment of your workforce as well. So thinking about all of those different, what you actually want to achieve, and getting the enablement technologies and processes to allow you to achieve that.
Perfect. Well, thank you both for joining me on the sofa. If anyone has any questions for Charlie and Gemma, feel free to reach out. They would love to answer them. And stay tuned for the next one in the series.